Hey guys, I'm JR and welcome to the first video lesson of the video training series on how to create digital art in Adobe Illustrator. Now, what we're going to do today is look through some of the tools we'll be using throughout this series. I'm not really going to go into full detail about all these tools in Illustrator. We're only going to discuss the ones we'll mostly be using throughout this entire series. So I'm just going to create new document, choose letter, and if you're wanting to follow along, you're welcome to. And this here is my artboard. If you guys don't know, this is a plain, simple canvas for Illustrator, basically. And the first tool I'm going to show you guys how to use is the direct selection tool. And I'm going to show you a little neat demonstration on what you can do with this tool. If you double click this corner, you can move it around and make different shapes with it, as you can see what I'm doing here. And if you double click this, which I already have selected, you can curve the corners, as you can see there. Now if you click once, it can select all the corners, and you can do that. And if you just select the lines itself, you can just move it. And this is the selection tool, which is just your average cursor in Adobe Illustrator. You can basically just select, then click off for unnecessary selections you've made in Illustrator. Or you can do that to select everything you need in the artboard selected. Next up is the pen tool. This basically creates corners for you in Adobe Illustrator. So that's a pretty neat tool, but the thing is with the pen tool, if you want to maybe like try to curve something smoothly, you click and drag like that and like that. It creates a perfectly smooth curve. But if you want to just do like, like better curves, and you don't want to have to click and drag and get it just right, you can use the curvature tool for that. You select there, and then there, and there, and there, and then right there. And I created a somewhat of a perfect oval, and that's what the curvature tool is for. And it's probably a lot more simpler than the pen tool. The pen tool is mostly for corners. One thing you probably don't know about the curvature tool though is that if you double click this, it makes it a rough line, a straight average line. But if I click over there, as you can see, it goes back to being curved like that, smooth. But if I double click that, it'll just go back to being an average line where you can center point to where you're going to put it next. But as you can see, if I select that and then I don't double click that, it'll just do that again. And it's Control Z or Command Z on a Mac, Control Z on a PC if you want to get rid of everything, or if you just want to delete half of everything you don't need in your artboard, then you can do that with Control Z on a PC or Command Z on a Mac. The next tool I'm going to show you, you guys probably already know about the rectangle tool, don't you? Yeah, it just creates rectangles. Now if I hold down Shift, click and drag, it creates a perfect square. I can do the same with the ellipse tool, in which that can make a perfect circle. Voila. And there's some other neat shapes here, like the polygon tool, which if I click once, I can determine how many sides I want for my polygon. And this will create a triangle. But if I give it 6 sides, it makes a polygon. And yeah, that's a pretty neat tool, isn't it? There's also the star tool, which if you click once, does the same thing. And there's also, the radius and whatnot, but you know, you don't really have to use that a whole lot. But that'll probably just help you, you know, largen it out if you want to determine what radius you want. If you want to maybe, like, largen it out, the shortest way of doing it is this. There's also the line segment tool, which creates perfect lines for you. And if I click and hold shift, it'll create a perfect straight line. It goes diagonal, down, diagonal, left, diagonal, up, right, and diagonal. Yep. But if I just do it loose, I can do it whatever I want. And next tool we got is the paintbrush tool. And if I double click on it, I can smoothen out my lines or make them accurate. If I smooth it out completely, it'll make it 100% smooth. Look at that. Perfect, huh? It's perfect smoothness. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at the middle. And you don't have to have any of these selected, just that one. And you don't really you also really don't have to, you know, worry about the width that much. If you want to go ahead and, you know, largen out your width and whatnot, you're free to do so. But I'm just going to keep mine at 12. The same thing is done with the pencil tool, except it's a thinner line, as you can see there. And those are perfect smooth lines. We're going to probably be using the pencil tool more often than the paintbrush tool, because the paintbrush tool, we'll use it some here and there for, like, you know, thickness and all that, but the pencil tool, I'm just going to be preferring to use that more often than the paintbrush tool. So anyway, I'm just going to select everything, delete, and that's the fastest way to delete everything off your artboard, is select everything and press delete or backspace. Okay, next up we have the type tool, which if I do that, it automatically has text there, which I don't really know why it does that though, because that's a mystery to me, actually. And over here you can pick a different font, which is good for a certain type of text you want. And it has all kinds of neat features to it. If you search up certain fonts on the Adobe site, it'll give you a whole new bunch of amazing fonts to pick from. For now, I'm just going to stick with that one. And over here, you can largen up your words. Right here, you can space them up or down. You can space them left, or sorry, right, or left. This, I'm not really sure what this does, though. It doesn't really do anything. It just stays on auto, and it always pops up with that warning, so I don't recommend touching that very much. That's probably just to maybe, like, space out some wording or whatnot, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. And this gives your font a more different kind of perspective. Bold, or bold italic, or regular. You see how it changes there? And it's still the same font, however, but it changes in a different kind of perspective when it's in italic or bold. So I recommend maybe just sticking with regular though for now, since we're just doing a demonstration. And you don't really have to follow along, but if you want to, you're happy to go ahead and, you know, tag along and just follow along with what I'm doing. And right here is where you can center or put your text side to side, whether it's on right or on the left. Or if you just want to get a certain text, like at the bottom, looking like that, that's what that does. But we'll probably center it more than actually, we'll probably just use these two, actually, the left and the center. The right one, not many people do this one very often, but either way, it's it's up to you, really. I don't really do it very often. I don't know about you guys, but, you know, it's a very, very, you know, common for me to use, you know, this or that. In fact, I don't do a whole lot of writing in Illustrator, you know, that's not really how I do things. Next up is the Shape Builder tool. So I'm just gonna delete that. And I'm gonna select my rectangle tool. And over here, before I forget, over here is the swatches panel. If I click none, it has no color, and if I click any of these, it'll make it into a color. Just for those of you who don't know, most of you who have done Illustrator probably already know this. Over here is the gradients, and these are just kind of some funny little, you know, wallpaper styles, but not many people use those. I guess that's just a default thing. That's what that is. And this is a registration color, which I will show you in another tutorial. But for now, we're just going to leave that at none, and I'll give it a black stroke, which is your outlines color. So I'm just going to give it a black, and then I'm going to get out the ellipse tool, click shift. And if I select everything, I can come over here to my Shape Builder tool now, and if I click and drag, it deletes those alignments. And if I do that, it combines the shapes into one whole shape itself. And that's the best way to combine shapes together and align them perfectly, is the Shape Builder tool. So we'll be using that some here and there. Next up is the Gradient tool. I'm going to select my shapes first and give them a gradient. Now if I almost forgot about that. Now I have my gradient selected, and I can do this, and this little thing helps me center it just right. And if I double click on this, I can drag out these lines here and make a new color. Same with this one. I'm going to give it a kind of a blue. The funny thing about gradients, though, guys, is that you know, gradients are always in style here and there, and out of style, and then in style again. It's kind of crazy, you know. And for the time being, I guess, you know, I'm not really sure if gradients are back in style or out of style again, but, you know, to me, they'll always be, you know, in style, you know, in a way. But a lot of people like using gradients here and there every so often. And over here is the radial gradient. Over here is the freeform gradient, which is probably not really any different. You can just do like a free gradient. Make your own kind of gradient there. See there? But we probably won't do that a whole lot, the freeform. We'll just do these two most of the time. And if I hover over the line here, I can make a new color point there. Also, before I forget, if I double click my swatches, I can also come over here and change up the color and create a new color. Because, you know, not every single like color in the world is here on the swatches panel. You kind of sometimes have to be a little creative and create your own colors over here. And up here is CMYK and RGB and grayscale, HSB, lab. These are kind of not really commonly used. The grayscale is not really used that often. That's probably more for gradients, you know, dark gradients. But RGB and CMYK are probably the best ones to use. But RGB is probably a hell of a lot better than any kind of color you could print out. CMYK is alright, but RGB is probably the best for commercial use and whatnot. CMYK is probably just like average printing style, or at least that's what I think it is. And this is spot color. I will discuss that in another tutorial, but the thing about spot color is that you can create your own custom color, and it'll That way you know it's the exact color you want. Right there, what you see with that little bit of white right there on that corner. That's how you know it's a spot color. So anyway, that's it for the gradients. Now, if I were to create a new shape, I'm going to show you how to use the eyedropper tool. Now, if I do this with the eyedropper tool, it can create a new color for the shape you have selected or the design you have selected. And it can... Sorry, my eyedropper tool is not usually an icon like this. It usually is an eyedropper, but it's acting kind of... Illustrator kind of acts funny here and there sometimes. But in other words, the eyedropper tool is good for selecting colors like off of an image that you want to use, like, you know, for commercial use and whatnot, or from like a postcard you've seen and you want to take that exact color and use it for a design you're making. Alright, so that is that with the eyedropper tool. Next up we have the width tool. Now I'm going to just probably delete all that first. And I'm just going to create a new line. There we go. And now I'm going to get my width tool out, and if I pull on my outlines, it'll do that. Make a perfect alignment like that. It'll go from bold to thin, and that is a pretty cool tool to use. And if I pull these, it widens them, and sometimes it'll act a little funny if you just, you know, move it all the way around like that. It'll look kind of weird, you know. And some designers, you know, probably, you know, don't like doing this too often to their alignments and everything, and the width tool or that, you know, it's kind of a really funny tool at times, but it's also, you know, really neat and just full on cool to use. So we'll use that a lot in Illustrator. But that is the width tool. And we have the last two here, and one neat thing I want to show you here is you can change the color of your swatches from fill to stroke. If you want to change the stroke to that color, you click these two arrows, or you want to change the fill from stroke. Next up is the Artboard tool. Now if I do this, I can drag it back and forth here and there. But if I click Alt or Option on a Mac, I can copy that. It's pretty neat, isn't it? I can copy that exact artboard. Now then, that's a pretty neat tool to use right there. We'll be using that some here and there. This is just the zoom tool. If I click and drag, I can move that out, or if I drag upward or downward. If I drag downward, it'll zoom in. If I drag upward, it'll zoom out. But there is a keypad shortcut instead of having to select the zoom tool all the time. But if you want to select the zoom tool, click Z. But if you want to not have the zoom tool, you can click Control or Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, and click the minus key or the plus key to zoom in. Minus key to zoom out, plus key to zoom in. And over here I want to show you the layers panels. And if I want to create a new design and I don't want to mess with my first design, it'll be on a new layer. But if I want to maybe, you know, not mess with anything or ruin my current design in my layer 1 panel, I can lock it and I can work all around on layer 2 as much as I want and not mess with this at all. But if I want to align something, I better unlock that. If I want to align something from layer 2, and if I want to maybe move layer 1 in the front, and I want to have it only in the front, then I move this down. And this little eyeball it basically hides your design if you don't want to see it. If you feel like it's in the way, just turn that off and it'll go away. And over here is the rulers and grids. We'll use maybe the ruler tool some here and there to measure out your designs and whatnot, just to center it right, but it probably won't be used very often throughout this video training series. I might try to show you guys how it works in a later tutorial. And over here is your alignment key buttons here. And I'm just gonna create a new shape and select everything, and then voila, I can align that perfectly. Or I can do it on the right or on the left, or I can just vertically align and center it all. And these are a little useful at times. These are distribute objects, but it's not really used as common as these right here. These are to align them perfectly and everything perfectly. Even your texts and whatnot you write on here in Illustrator. And if you want to open up, a little panel like this up, you go to Windows up here and you get all your Windows panels up here in Windows. And yes, that's where you can find everything you need if you just select all that. And there's the keyboard shortcuts to tell you how to select certain panels you want opened. Alright, so that is the end of this tutorial. So I'm not going to show you anything else. Like I said, I just wanted to show you a few tools. And, well, I think the next tutorial I want to show you how to create the easiest portrait you could possibly make in Adobe Illustrator. So let's dive right in and get started.